What's going on, everybody? It's EricRayweather back here with more Madden 18 news. Now, it's been a little bit since I've dropped any new Madden 18 news updates, but I've been back watching some more interviews from Rex Dixon and Clint Odenberg, and they've been releasing some more new information or touching upon previously released information and going more in depth. So I figured it was time to update y'all on some new Madden 18 gameplay fixes and gameplay additions, because that's what most of us are worried about at the end of the day, is gameplay. We want improvements, we want things fixed, we want new features. So without further ado and wasting too much time, let's get into them. Now, the first thing that I want to touch on is the spin and the juke. Now, I did touch on this in a previous video, but just to touch on it a little bit more because they've been talking about it more. The spin and the juke are both back this year. The spin move has been kind of worthless for the past few years. The juke move was really good the past couple years, but this year was really bad, was taken out of the game. And it really took elusive backs out of the game because you couldn't get the most out of them. That's changed this year. It is ratings based, but if you have those good juking backs, you're going to get a bigger benefit for timing the juke right. You're going to shake people out of their cleats. You're going to make a lot of guys miss more tackles if your guy has a good juke rating. So, you know, think of a guy maybe like LaShawn McCoy in the high 90s juke. If you juke with him, you're making people miss. Whereas if you have a bigger trucking back, you're going to want to truck with him. If you try to juke with him, you're not going to, you know, get that misses often, or if at all. The spin move is really interesting because this used to be one of the more deadly moves in Madden, but it's been nerfed these past few years. But they're saying that it's back. If you have a guy with a good spin rating and you time your spin, you are going to completely leave the defender in a cloud of dust, and you know, are able to pick up a lot more yardage if you time that spin move right, which is really huge and something that needed to be fixed. So really pay attention to your ratings this year, because it sounds like from a lot of the interviews I've watched that they are really focusing on the ratings this year and making them matter more than ever. You know, many years the only rating that matters that much is speed, or you know, there might be a few others, but this year they sound really focused on making every rating count for something and really have an outcome in the game. So definitely pay attention to your ratings this year. Something new they added to the game that's pretty cool is reach tackles and reach sacks. Now what this means is, let's say your defensive end is getting blocked, but he's close to the quarterback. He's within arm's length. You can click onto that defensive end, and I think he said by pressing the right bumper or maybe the left bumper. It's one of the bumpers. If you're like within arm's reach of the quarterback, even if you're getting blocked, you can reach out and actually grab the quarterback. So like say grab him by the jersey or grab him by the shoulder or the arm and actually try to bring him down or hold him off until another defender gets to him. He said this is going to result in a lot more gang tackles and gang sacks. You know, multiple people tackling or sacking the quarterback because you're able to reach for them. Reach tackles is a similar thing. So say you're running the ball through the, you know, the line of scrimmage, you're running through the trenches, and you click onto a defensive tackle who's being blocked, but you're within arm's reach of that running back. You can press the bumper, reach over, and try to grab the running back. Now, you may not tackle him, but you may slow him down, or you may hold him up while another guy comes in to complete the tackle. So, you know, that's something you see every Sunday in the NFL, so very good that they added that to the game, and those type of things are very good additions. The little attention to detail things like that is what helps make the game a better, more realistic experience. So that's something to definitely look out for this year. Definitely going to help more on defense. Now, the next thing is, this one might not be that big of a deal to some people, but the QB Avoidance Stick, which was the right stick, they've removed that from the game. Now, I don't think this is that big of a deal because most people, as far as I know, didn't even use this. It didn't work that well. I mean, sometimes it worked, but, you know, most people didn't use this as far as I know. So if, you know, you were about to get sacked, you know, if you timed it right, you can press the right stick and, you know, pull off like a Ben Roethlisberger, for example, where you're making guys miss in the backfield and buying more time with your quarterback. Definitely a good idea, a cool idea, but I don't think it ever really worked the way they envisioned it. And this brings me to the next point, which is something to do with target passing. The reason they took that QB Avoidance Stick out is because now the target passing system is used with the right stick, so it interfered. So, you know, they couldn't have both, so they removed the QB Avoidance, which, you know, they knew most people weren't using anyway, so I don't think it's going to cause too much of an uproar. Now, going into target passing, they said that target passing won't be completely ratings based because it's more of a user thing that you have to pull off. What target passing is, for those that don't know, is you're now able to throw the ball to a spot on the field as opposed to just throwing it to a receiver. Now, you don't have to use this, but it's another feature that you can use. So think of like throwing a back shoulder fade on the sideline, for example, or leading a post route over the middle of the field, but throwing it really early to throw your wide receiver open. It is a hard mechanic to use from what we've heard so far. It's going to be something that probably only elite players or people that put a lot of practice into this mechanic will be able to use, but they revealed that it won't be completely ratings based. It's going to be more user based. It's more timing from the user. Now, they said things like, you know, throw power will matter in terms of how fast you get the ball out when you target pass, but, you know, accuracy won't matter as much because you're kind of taking over the accuracy with that mechanic, if that makes sense. So that was something that they touched on that I was actually surprised to hear. So it will give the, you know, the person doing the target passing, it'll give them pretty much full control over the accuracy of the pass. Now, the next thing, which is a big thing, is they have retuned and made the defensive shading better. Now, what this means, for those that don't know, is, you know, on defense, you could shade over top and tell your defensive, you know, backs, play deep, you know, worry about streaks or post routes. You could tell them to play underneath, shade them underneath, where they would focus on the shorter routes, you know, the routes that are in front of the first down marker, like a drag route or, you know, a short in route. You could tell them to play to the outside, which would, you know, have them more focused on the sidelines, like fade routes or corner routes. Now, this didn't always work that well these past few years. It worked, but not nearly to the full capability that it should have. They said this year they have retuned it, and they said it's going to be a very big part of the game this year. They said, in fact, like if you're pressing your cornerbacks and you shade them to the outside, so if you shade them to the outside, what that means is you're trying to force the wide receivers to the inside. If you shade the cornerbacks to the outside, they're going to actually line up to the outside a little bit. They're not going to line up right over the wide receiver. They're going to be shifted a little bit over to the right, and when they press, they are going to press that way and try to force the receiver inside. Same thing if you play inside. They're going to line up on the inside and try to force the wide receiver to the sideline. This is huge news. This has definitely been needed in the game, and they said, again, this is going to be something that is heavily ratings-based. So, you know, if you're out there with a guy that has a very poor press rating against a wide receiver that has good release and good route running, and you try to force them to the sideline, you're going to lose that battle the majority of the time. But if you have a guy that has amazing press rating and, you know, going against a, you know, a wide receiver that may even be equally as good or a little less, you're going to win that battle most of the time because you have the ratings to do it. So especially when you're playing Ultimate Team, this is going to really factor in those defensive ratings like press or zone coverage and things like that a lot more. So I'm very excited. It's one of the things I'm most excited to hear about because I'm a guy that likes to shade on defense. You know, I shade underneath, I shade over the top, I shade to the outside when I pick up on my opponent's tendencies. So to know that it's going to work more properly how it's supposed to, that's music to my ears. So I'm glad to hear that. Speaking to music to my ears, another thing, this is probably the thing I'm most excited about, and we've already heard this, but they've touched on it more in depth. You're not going to be able to stop the run out of past defenses anymore. Now, that just sounds like a no-brainer. That sounds like, duh, this should have been in the game. It should have been this way, but it just hasn't been this way. You know, this year in dollar defense, you could routinely stop run-heavy formations for some reason. Last year, quarters defense was one of the better run defense formations in the game for some reason. You could literally stop, if you were good at using your linebacker on defense and you were in quarters, you could stop the run so easily out of that because for whatever reason, the way it just lined up last year, it just created gaps that made it easy for you to run through and just pop the running back in the backfield. It was absolutely ludicrous. You should never be able to stop a run-heavy formation with quarters defense or dollar defense or dime defense. But in past Maddens, there's always at least one of those formations that for some reason you could stop the run out of. That's dead this year. If you're in a run-heavy formation and they're in nickel or dime or quarters or dollar, they're going to get pancaked. If you have this exact phrase that Clint Odenberg said in one of his interviews is, if you have a weak box on defense, so that would mean like 5 in the box, 4 in the box, and your opponent's in a run-heavy formation, you know, like a twin tight end formation, they're going to get pancaked. They're going to get annihilated. Doesn't matter how good the user is. I mean, you know, a good user may be able to stop it a little bit better, but they're still going to get annihilated, which is awesome. That is how the game should play. Now, you know, if you have a strong box, like 7, 8 in the box, you're going to stop the run more times than not, but that's how it should be. That's the chess match of football. So, glad to hear that. That is a very big thing. On to the next. We have a couple things left to discuss. If you played Ultimate Team, specifically Salary Cap this year, you'll know about this one. The bronze offensive lines. When you play Salary Cap mode, for those that don't know, you need to build your team within a salary cap, so you can't load up all the best players. You have to tank certain positions or certain spots. What people did this year was they tanked their whole offensive line. They would just put the worst offensive lineman they could get in the game, like 50 and 60 overall rated guys. But for some reason in salary cap mode, they would hold up. You could have the worst offensive lineman in the game and you could still stop elite defensive pass rushers for some reason. You could stop them in the run, you could stop them in the pass. Pretty consistently, which was terrible, and they seem like they can never truly fix it for some reason this year, but they said that is gone this year. Again, ratings matter. If you have a bad offensive lineman and you're going against a pretty good defensive lineman, he's going to get block shed immediately. He's not going to stand a chance. On the flip side, if you have really good blocking offensive linemen, run blocking, pass blocking, they're going to provide that extra time, or they're going to provide that extra push for you. So that's huge news, just because, I mean, that's like, again, another one of those no-brainer things that I guess slipped through the cracks somehow last year. Not intentionally, but it just did. But they've definitely focused on it this year and said it will matter more than ever. Offensive line this year is huge. Just a bunch of different things they added to really make the offensive line and blocking matter, which is, that should make everybody happy, because that's something we've complained about for the past decade, it seems like. The next thing, this is a new thing, it's positional advantage. Now, what that means is, you know, if you're the wide receiver and you have inside position on the defensive back, you should catch that ball. You should shield him off because you have a positional advantage. Vice versa on defense. If you're playing over the top and they throw a streak and you're over top and you have the better position than the wide receiver, you should defend that ball or intercept it. These past few years, it hasn't been that way. It's crazy. It's almost like it was the opposite. If you had good position on defense, you actually, you know, would dumb out and not intercept the ball or swat the ball, and the receiver would catch it. And then vice versa, sometimes on offense, when the wide receiver had the better position, the defensive backs would glitch or, you know, kind of jump through your body and still intercept or swat the ball. It's crazy. That is gone. Positional advantage is a real thing in Madden 18, and I think it's mainly due to the Frostbite engine. So if you're the defensive back and you're playing over the top and somebody tries to throw a streak, you're going to intercept that ball more times than not. If you're playing underneath and they throw it underneath, you're going to intercept that ball more times than not. On offense, if you have the, let's say you throw in a post route and your wide receiver has the inside position on the safety, you're going to shield them off, like pretty much boxing them out. Think of like a basketball term. You're going to be able to box them out because you have position and use your body to shield you and catch the ball. So that's huge. That's real life football. It doesn't get any more real than that. So great that they finally addressed that. And the last thing is Xoring on defense. Now, we've already touched on the fact that you can't hold Y anymore on defense. You have to time it. But what's even better is there's no more of this. Let's just say this year, you know, any linebacker could, if you were a good user on defense, you could have any linebacker that had decent speed, and you could pretty much cover multiple routes at one time. You could shut down multiple routes because you had the ability to stop on the dime and just change directions and bait people into throwing picks to you. That's not going to be as effective this year. They said unless you have a very elite linebacker, those guys will be able to stop on the dime a little bit better. Not as overpowered as it has been, but they'll be able to change direction better and jump different routes. But the average linebacker that's just fast, they're not going to be able to stop on that dime anymore and just make a beeline for the next route and just change direction with no, you know, momentum to worry about. The momentum's going to matter. They're going to be slowed down. It's going to take them longer to change direction. All of this is going to matter. So gone are the days of people being able to just bounce around with a linebacker on defense and just cover multiple routes, cover half the field by just running around like a madman, stopping on a dime. The ratings are going to matter. You're not going to be able to stop on the dime as easy. You know, the weight and the momentum is going to matter. And again, this is Frostbite engine that is, I think, making this more possible than ever. So the Frostbite engine is going to make a lot of, you know, gameplay issues go away or fix them because of how responsive this engine is. So that's all I have for today. That's all of the new news that I've rounded up from several interviews. As always, I'm going to keep you updated with anything new that comes out. You know, we're about 6 weeks away from the game at this point, so we're going to be getting a lot of gameplay footage and things going forward. So definitely stay tuned for my reactions and, you know, thoughts on that. As always, if you enjoyed the video, just drop a like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.